The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to the Keefer and Kurre. If you have not gotten a chance to listen, need to know, or you're just tuning in, I think we play these shows back-to-back on TKR. I think we do. We may actually separate them because I think a full hour of Keefer may be too much.
I'm doing 4 hours this Wednesday on Talk 99.5. Yeah. Just a warning to anybody that's got a faint heartbeat.
It's fantastic stuff, and that's something I listen to your show every day. Sometimes I don't listen to it while you're actually recording it because I'm doing some other things, but I make sure I listen to it every single week. And it was my idea for you to come out with your top 10 or whatever your best.
And I gave you full credit at the beginning, yes.
Your executive orders, because I knew you'd fly off, and I knew there'd be several there that would make me chuckle, and you certainly got my funny bone laughing there. We lost. I was doing some research over the last, say, 20 years. We lose an average of 10 to 15 A-list stars every year.
Yep.
And when I say A-list stars, I'm talking big time people. And I'm talking like the likes of Eddie Van Halen. I'm talking people that, Michael Jackson. I'm talking people, when you talk about A-star people, and then you got your B-star people, and I put Val Kilmer in the B-star thing. The A-star people are when you stop, you pull the car off the side of the road. You're like, it's not that you remember where you were when it happened.
Yeah,
it's not all Lady Di stuff, but it is like, okay, that's a monster loss. That's going to change the world. The world's no different that Val Kilmer's not here. Sorry, I love Val Kilmer. I wish he was still
great
here,
actor,
but a great actor. Did the Top Gun movies and the Doors movie and stuff. Great guy, but the world did not stop when Val Kilmer passed away. I just didn't. And then you got your C people that you don't even you like. Oh yeah, maybe the lead singer of the Outfield, maybe a B guy, maybe a C guy. And so
where would you put the recent passing in the last 24 hours of Brian Wilson?
I'm glad you brought that up because it's exactly where I wanted to go to do. Great minds think alike. I went through. We are roughly halfway through this year. And so I wanted to go in memoriam of the losses of life we've had this year in celebritydom and rock and roll. And Brian Wilson, obviously, A all day long. I mean, it's not even close.
Yeah, I agree.
But just based on what I'm seeing so far, we haven't really lost too many A's this year. And I mean, I'm a trend guy. I look at numbers. I hope I'm wrong here, but it appears that the next 6 or 7 months, we could have some really huge stars or rock and rollers not with us, just based off the numbers. So I want to go through what we've lost this year, and I'd love to get your take on any of these in particular people. I did take all the big ones, but I also took several small ones that you may know. Good?
Okay.
Do you know who Peter Yarrow is?
What's his last name?
Yarrow. Y-A-R-O. He was part of Peter, Paul, and Mary. I didn't know if you're.
I didn't know. I never knew his last name.
A lot of people didn't. He passed away. Of Sam and Dave fame, Sam Moore passed away.
Yep.
And I'd certainly say that if this happened in the 70s and 80s, Sam would have been an A-star back then because Sam and Dave were huge. Bob Uecker passed away this year.
Yeah, I knew that, which, Bob Uecker was just quite a character, and you continued into his 90s. He was still doing Brewers games right up to the end. He wasn't traveling anymore, but he was doing home games still, right? Even the beginning of this season, or maybe it was just right to the end of last season. I can't remember when he specifically passed, but he was still going strong, and was, he actually had his own television series for a while. Yeah. Mr. Belvedere.
He sure did. I totally forgot about that.
And of course, he was in a lot of movies, and he was actually one of Johnny Carson in his autobiography said Bob Uecker was one of his favorite guests that came on the Tonight Show.
Really?
He would have Johnny in stitches every time he came on. Go back on YouTube and watch some of Euchre's appearances on Tonight Show. You'll get a big kick out of it.
I see it. I knew you'd have something to say about that. And a lot of us obviously found out about Bob Uecker from the Miller Lite commercials. He was huge in those, and also obviously Major League, the movie, just a little outside.
Yeah, exactly.
He was so good, and of course, Mister No Respect up in the top row, and the
yeah.
bingo,
Well, that was the
bingo
best
in the
Miller
top
Lite
row.
commercial because he
Yeah.
says one of the great things about being a former ball player is free tickets to the games, and he plops down and like in the right behind first base in like the fourth or fifth row, and the guy goes, "Sir, can I see your ticket?" This is not your seat. He goes, "I must be in the front row."
Must be in the front
And
row,
then they
and he's
show him
sitting
he's in right field in the next to highest row, all by himself up there.
one of the greatest lines in any commercial. Oh, I must be in the front
I
row.
must be in the front row.
David Lynch, fan of David Lynch, producer,
Yes.
Twin Peaks,
Very
Mulholland
notable.
Way.
I did
some-
not realize he'd passed.
He did some really. He just passed a couple months ago. He did some really bizarre.
Yes, he was different.
Dr. Rab
Not,
Stewart, who's
not
on Dark
afraid
Side
to
of the Push.
take chances.
No, and again, like Twin Peaks. Some of the things he did were just mesmerizing, and they just changed the way we looked at television. Roberta Flack.
Oh, wow. Killing Me Softly.
Killing Me Softly, which was one of the great songs. She did Feel Like Making Love, which was a big hit that was redone by George Benson. I would tell anybody, if you get a chance after the show, go listen to George Benson's Feel Like Making Love. He put his own spin on it. It is fantastic.
Well,
It
I'm
is
not
so
familiar
good.
with it. I will.
Oh my gosh, it's up tempo. It's fantastic.
Because what made Roberta Flack great, Tony, was the emotion and the voice inflection in her songs. She didn't just sing lyrics; she made you feel the lyrics, and that's to me that's the most extraordinary quality that a singer can provide.
Absolutely, Killing Me Softly, of course, swept the Grammys. Did fantastic.
Such
She
a
also-
fantastic song.
She also had a song called "Where Is the Love." That was a great song. Where is the love? Which is unbelievable.
What are there any duets anymore that are good, or because a bunch of people dancing around and a bunch of thumpity thump music? I love one of the things I like going out in my driveway and sitting in my chair and getting some sun is listening to 60s and 70s music because there's so many great duets. The Marvin Gaye, Tammy Terrell, "Ain't No Mountain High Enough" is one of the most amazing collaborations ever.
Yeah, there was. I mean, there were some. But of course, everyone knows about the Elton John Kiki D. You got. You had one with Casey of Casey and the Sunshine Band. Who was the gal that he did the big hit with?
I don't remember.
Anyway, I totally agree with you. I mean,
I love duets.
and back then it was weird because the only way you could do a duet is if both people were from the same label.
Yeah.
And
yes.
and people wouldn't do that. And now, of course, you got everyone's crossing labels. And I guess where you get your best duets, and I wouldn't know these because I don't listen to this type of music, is country music. I know country music does a ton of duets, almost too many duets. A guy who sang "Sad Eyes," "The Lion Sleeps Tonight," Robert John.
Okay.
I remember "Sad Eyes." I remember that. I remember that song because it was on one of my K-Tel albums.
Oh, I love K-Tel albums.
And I was a huge fan of those K-Tel albums. I would get those K-Tel albums out, and occasionally they'd slide one by you that wasn't the original artist. It was someone singing all the shit, and it was just they were really bad renditions. But the K-Tel albums, Robert John was big. Where would you put George Wendt?
I don't know if he's an A-lister, but certainly a notable career.
Yeah. I don't really know him from too many other shows outside Cheers. And I do like to listen when there's a death. There's been a remarkable amount of acknowledgement.
Yes.
Of Brian Wilson, and as there should be. And I always like to see whether it's going to be something that's going to be like an NBC Nightly News or Fox, if it's going to be one of those side stories where it's going to be at the end. If we got time, we'll get to it. Or is it going to be one of those top stories? And Brian Wilson was a top story. And
absolutely
that should tell you.
Now on George Wendt, probably more notable than his acting career is the response from all the people that worked with him in various. I mean, by all accounts, this was one of the finest human beings that these people ever knew. And at the end of the day, that makes him an A-lister in terms of his effect on others and just the glowing tributes they have saying what a consummate pro he was and how he was concerned about everybody else and didn't put any stock in any things that he needed. If they needed to do a retake or whatever, they never had to worry about George Wendt having any problem with it because he was just that kind of guy.
Yeah, and probably one of the greatest side actors, if you will, to a series. Obviously, he got his name on the television screen whenever
Yeah.
they did the, which is always always huge whenever you get your name mentioned with everyone else, along with Ted Danson and the rest of the
Yeah,
crew.
and if you're
Um,
doing a show about a bar, if you're doing a
yeah,
show about a bar, you have to have the right barfly characters. And the creators of Cheers did as good a job with that as anybody could possibly have
and it
done.
was funny too
Cliff
because what
Clavin,
yeah, Cliff Clavin. When I heard that he passed, I was like, man, there's one show that I would love to see a reunion of.
oh
I
yeah.
know Coach is gone, but everyone else is still alive. I think everyone's still Fraser
Well,
Crane. I mean,
Kirstie
everyone.
Alley passed away, who took over for
She
Shelley
did.
Long.
She did. That's true.
Uh,
I totally forgot
Yeah.
about that.
So Kirsty's gone, but Shelley Long's still around. Ted Danson's still hanging in there. Coach died, the
Yeah.
original bartender who was
Woody
who was
Woody
listed.
Harrelson. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, when we saw
Yeah,
him, when
yeah.
we saw him in Cheers, who would have thought that he would have
He,
been in all these other strange, weird ass movies that he's done?
yeah, an obscure actor to take over for Coach, and Woody make parlayed that into a massive career.
White Men Can't Jump. I mean, he was all over the place.
That's a
Here,
great movie too, by the way.
Here's one for
Him
you.
and
This is and I don't know if you knew this. You probably do. But this man owned the largest collection of rock and roll guitars in history. Jim Irsay.
really,
Jim
he
Irsay of the
did.
Indianapolis Colts. He
Yeah, I
had
had
he
no
had
idea.
Jimi Hendrix guitars. He had you name it. He's got a guitar signed and autographed by whoever, Paul McCartney, you name it. He had one of the biggest collections of electric and rock and roll memorabilia, guitars. Period.
How about that?
I followed Jim. Um, Jim was a weird dude. We know that towards the end there, I guess a couple, 2, 3 years ago, he either got a DUI or got caught with a bunch of pills. He was he was constantly talking about the Indianapolis cheerleaders, which I thought was a really creepy thing. As your owner, you don't really talk about, but he go, "Hey, cheerleader workouts today, ladies, if you want to come down." And I'm thinking,
Yep.
why is the GM, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, telling cheerleaders? So I mean, the guy sounded like he liked to chase some tail and have a good time. So maybe he was more my kind of guy than I thought he was.
Well, our colleague, the legend from the Paul Feinbaum show, and also on our cast at the starting lineup, as a lifelong Colts fan, and Jim Irsay did something for Legend that you never would have expected because the most hated person in Legend's life was Jim's father, Robert Irsay,
Yeah.
who moved the Colts in the middle of the night. Brought in Mayflower moving vans, packed up all the stuff in the Colts executive headquarters, and literally snuck out of town in the dark of night where the media wouldn't cover it and all that stuff. And really, the Baltimore Colts were such an institution in that market that people to this day are just heartbroken that the Colts left in that way. But Jim Irsay had restored enough integrity in the organization in Indianapolis where Legend has basically forgiven the Irsay name. And
Yeah.
now it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jim Irsay passing away at kind of an early age. What was he, 59 or
He
6?
was
He wasn't very
60,
old.
64,
Yeah,
65.
but now his daughter is the CEO and president, so that's going to be an interesting situation.
That is
Sounds like
well.
a Hollywood movie in the queue for that. If she's has any kind of success,
I doubt
she
we're
might
going to
be
see.
like,
I doubt we're going to see as many texts about or tweets about the
yeah, I
cheerleaders
don't think
from
so.
this point
I
on.
I
Yeah,
I got to tell you a funny story. When the Rams owner Reeves drowned in a Pacific Ocean accident, his wife Georgia Frontieri, that was her maiden name, but when she took over as owner, there was a funny story. Some actress came out and was watching the Rams practice with her, and she says, "Look out there! Do you see what I see?" She goes, "Every one of those tight ends, I own them."
she did. Hey, listen. As far as the owners, they loved her, man. I mean, they
Oh,
loved
she
her.
was.
They
She,
loved her as much as the Reds fans loved Mark Schott.
oh,
She
yeah.
had some issues, but man, she was a great owner. They loved her, man. They got
Yeah,
after.
Georgia Frontiere was just a good time socialite. She was living the dream.
A guy that's certainly he's a lister for me, and I got a chance to meet him 20 years ago, but he'd be a B, I think, on anyone else's list. But he played with everybody. He played with the Doobie, Steely Dan. He was with the Edgar Winter group when they came out with they only come out at night. Frankenstein, the whole lines. Rick Derringer, who was the All-American
Oh,
boy.
wow.
He had the song "Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo,"
Hoochie Coo.
which is another song that was on one of my K-Tel albums. That song still kicks ass. If you go listen to "Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo," that song gets after it. But Rick Derringer passed away earlier this year. I don't know if you have any thoughts
Oh
on
man,
Rick.
I did not know that. I should have jumped in on this before because I want to get to your list. But I actually had the experience one New Year's Eve when I was living in the thriving metropolis of West Memphis, Arkansas. We had the races on New Year's Eve, and we headed out for some post racing celebrations on New Year's Eve. Counted down the New Year's at the VFW in West Memphis. Just very, I was a high level socialite at the time.
Yeah.
But we hooked up with some girls that were there, and they said, "Well, we're going to do like an after party up at our place. If you guys want to come," I had a couple friends of mine from Atlanta, so we follow them forever. I mean, out into the middle of nowhere in Arkansas to a mobile home in Turl, Arkansas. It's about 45 minutes from Memphis. We pull up in this mobile home, go in, and they put on a K-Tel album right away. My friend Joe went over and looked at it in the turntable and said, "It's a K-Tel album." We had never seen any such thing, and there was dancing in of course the mobile home, and it was rocking, but it wasn't from the activity that the
Oh
old
my gosh.
slogan comes
I
from.
thought you were going to tell me Rick Derringer was in the mobile home.
Well, I think Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo was featured. It might have been the same album you had. And I had a big old friendly girl who had me cornered, and I had just enough beers where, I probably would have relented. But the good friends I had, thank God,
Helped
tapped
you
me out,
out.
got me out of there as the sun was rising. One of my most memorable New Year's Eves ever.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful.
Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, baby.
Rock and roll hoochie coo, baby. What about Loretta Swit?
Oh yeah, we talked about that. It's funny. Again, back to one of our partners, Terry Quillian and I do radio and TV. And last year we had a Michigan fan who just didn't like us at all because we are not fair to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And I sent a message back to him, dude. I do an SEC football show in the middle of the Deep South, half an hour from the campus of Alabama. I don't have to give the Big Ten a fair shake. Those are not my people. I don't
Exactly.
like the Big Ten. Anyway, he comes on the next week and goes, his response was, "You and your partner Hot Lips Houlihan," thinking he was insulting her. She goes, "I take that as a compliment. She was a successful, beautiful
was.
Hollywood actress." So
was.
this guy thought he was lobbing a big insult. So when she passed away last week, that's the first message I got was from Terry that Loretta Swit, Hot Lips Houlihan, who she was compared to, had passed. And I went back and read a lot of things on her bio, and
really,
she had,
she got more attractive as that show went on. She was as hot as she'd ever been.
I think they tried to make her look kind of rough in the early parts of it. Because if you remember the MASH movie, Sally Kellerman played that part.
Yep.
And never really a looker, but that character was a military brat kind of hard ass. And I think as the character got more popular as the show went on, and when she was with Frank Burns, they couldn't make her look too hot, or she would be needing psychiatric help. Nobody would gravitate to Frank Burns, that had a semblance of any kind of intelligence. But when they started to make her more of a likable mainstream character, I think they really let her become glamorous, and I think that was a good thing in
Yeah,
that
she was
show.
loosey goosey early in the MASH thing. One of my favorite episodes. Then I forget. It certainly wasn't one of the funny. And man, if you go back and watch MASH,
Oh,
I mean, it was just
genius.
they did so many things that were so cutting edge. I remember the running clock.
Oh
They did a
yeah.
running clock episode. But there was the one episode where her and Alan Alda were trapped in some cave or something, and
Yes.
they ended up kissing each other to get through the bombing, and they came back and had to deal with what had happened. But for some reason I fervently remember that particular episode. But I mean, she was a floozy, she was fun, she was screwing around with Frank Burns, and then by the end of it, man, she was a brat. I mean, she could have been a colonel, a general. She could have been whatever she wanted to be in that particular show because you did not want to mess with her ass. Back then,
No.
and that's where the show really, I'm not gonna say it fell apart, but it got really it got intense. It was the laugh tracks didn't work as well, and of course that's when BJ Honeycutt was on the show, and but man, what a great! I still go back and watch old episodes, and I'm like, God, it was so good. I mean,
Yep.
every person on there. Sly Stone. What do you remember about Sly Stone?
Just a whole line of really timeless hits. Sly and the Family Stone. I mean, it was just one of those kind of defining sounds of my youth.
Yep.
I never knew a lot about the personal story of the band or Sly himself, but they were a major force in the years that I was growing up.
And finally, we touched on him briefly, but I want to do a little bit more time on Brian Wilson. I've seen Brian play in concert a million times. I saw him, the Beach Boys, they've been touring for about 50 years. And it was the Beach Boys without Brian Wilson. It was the Beach Boys with Brian Wilson. And everyone
Yep.
was like, is Brian Wilson going to be there? And it really got to the point. Jan and Dean were one of the first concerts that I ever brought on stage here. They played the Alabama Theater back in 1989. And I had seen Dead Man's Curve. I knew how it ended, and I knew that Jan had been hurt and that it had messed up his career. And I saw, if you've never seen Dead Man's Curve, go watch that movie. It's a great movie. It's fantastic. And so I meet Dean Torrance, and Dean signs this album. I get this album, and he signed Ann Dean. And I said, do you think I can get Gene or Jan to sign this? And he goes, on a good day, he'll sign it for you, but on a bad day, blah, blah, blah. And so I met, and of course, Jan is holding, one hand, he's holding his up like this with the microphone in the other hand. I mean, he was a mess. I mean, he was a mess. And they had one of the tightest bands I'd ever heard. The show was fantastic. I mean, this
Wow.
band played better than Jan and Dean did. And of course, Dean was up there and he was probably in his 60s at the time. And Jan gets up there, and I asked him if he'd sign it, and he said, and he was slurring his words. He goes, I think the album looks better without my name on it. And
Oh,
I remember him telling me that, and I said, okay. And I didn't have it signed, and to this day, I still have it. It just says,
oh, and Dean.
"Have a bitchin' summer." And Dean,
Oh,
and
wow.
to go along with that as a great story because it doesn't have Jan's name on it.
Well, I was going to
Um,
say it's probably worth more as a historical
yeah,
relic
yeah,
without his signature on it because that's
exactly.
anything that's really unusual is usually regarded as
Yeah.
more of a treasure for collectors.
So Brian, his music was, and for people who don't remember, the Beach Boys were number one in this country. Period. There was no Beatles yet.
Yep.
Late 50s, early 60s. Get around. They were rolling. Good Vibrations, all that stuff came later. And the Beatles were the only ones that were big enough to come in and knock them off. I mean, that's how big the Beach Boys were. And now I think a lot of people that don't know who the Beach Boys were, don't know what Pet Sounds is or Good Vibe, they come in, they know it's some West Coast thing and it's surfing safari, blah 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 blah. And they don't realize uh, he was Brian was the first performer ever to write, direct, perform, and produce all at the same time.
Wow.
He was the first person, and I did a little research because I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about there. But he's the first guy that did everything around a patina. And of course, Pet Sounds was one of those albums that, quite frankly, if he hadn't gone through some of his mental incapacitations and some of his mental problems, he got off the road back in 64, 65 and said, I can't do this. The road was killing him. He was into drugs, all kinds of things. And so that's when he wrote Pet Sounds. I remember laughing, not at him, not as at his expense, but it was kind of like, really, the Beach Boys with Brian Wilson. But it almost felt like if you were at the Beach Boys concert and Brian Wilson wasn't there, it wasn't really the Beach Boys. Brian had to be there whether he just stood there or sang or did anything. It wasn't a Beach Boys concert without Brian Wilson. Period.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and I hate that the drug thing really painted him in a light that, back then, back in the 60s and 70s, everyone was doing stuff. I mean, it was it was just a matter of whether you could quit before it kill you.
Read Ball 4. Jim Bouton talks about big bowls of amphetamines in the clubhouse. You just grabbed a handful, whatever
Yep.
were going out to play. It was just the current trendy, stylish thing to do.
Yep.
Drug abuse that's when it was introduced, and a lot of the ill effects and the things that the repercussions of becoming hooked on a variety of different things wasn't really known. It was just a different era.
I
And
remember Quaaludes. My brother used to talk about Quaaludes.
God,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't. Probably because my brother did Quaaludes. I'm not. I've never done a Quaalude. I don't even know what a Quaalude is. But I remember people talking about Quaaludes in the 70s.
yeah.
At school.
All the guys in the back park at our high school, it was the back parking lot. If you wanted any kind of illicit substances, but yeah, that was always the language back there. I got some Quaaludes. And I said, well, good for you. Maybe I should have gotten altered more back then. Maybe I'd be a better product at this stage, but I was not a fan of being not in control.
No.
People always seem to gravitate to drugs as an escape. And I kind of liked my existence. I didn't want to escape.
There's no doubt. And you could certainly make an argument. And Eric Clapton. I mean, I could think about a million different people that I wrote some of my best material when I was messed up. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, you did, but it sure would have been nice to see what you would have written without it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you can go back to the Jefferson Starship, Grace. Like, I mean, we go on and on and on about people that just wrote some incredible music. Willie Nelson, to this day, by the way, he just released a new album. I didn't know Willie Nelson was still
amazing.
alive.
No, I thought we lost him like 10 years ago till I heard
Yeah.
something about him doing something recently. He's still around.
He's
Wow.
amazing. And to your point too, and it's crazy because I was watching, I know it's one of your favorite shows, but I was watching one of the new episodes of The Unexplained. I still can't figure out how William Shatner is still focusing.
Oh,
I still
what a
can't at
beast.
the age of 90. I was watching him last night and I was like, and he's still doing television. He's still doing his thing. I mean, it's unbelievable how good he sounds and how good he looks. I mean, it's unbelievable.
At the end of every show, he's got the standard line. He delivers the line differently every time.
Yep.
He says, and until we have more facts, we're just going to have to accept the fact it's unexplained. He's just awesome.
He is awesome. He's great. Hey, great show, my friend. Let's do it again soon. Of course, don't forget, coming up, depending on when you're listening to the show, it is Friday the 13th. Saturday mornings, 10:30, 11 o'clock, ABC 3340, the starting lineup. We got another killer show going on tomorrow. And then, of course, happy Father's Day. If you're getting a chance to listen to our last week's Keefer and Kurre, we did a great Father's Day tribute. So check that out and listen to all of our great shows. And you're going to be tell us where you're going to be on terrestrial radio. 'Cause
Yeah.
I know you have a ton of stuff going on over the next few weeks.
Yeah, the next 4 Wednesdays, this week, the coming week, the 18th, the 25th, July 2nd, and July 9th, I will be in for Leland Whaley on Leland Live, the top-rated talk show in the market, and 2 to 6 every Wednesday for the next 4 weeks. And I hope everybody will call in and be with me on the show. I got to do 4 hours. You were just talking about back-to-back Kip Keefer on TKR as an hour. That's a lot to swallow.
When you talk, do you even look at the clock? Do you just have the producer tell you to shut up?
I keep an eye on it because I don't really like the producer going, "Oh, we got to take a break."
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty good at that.
Pretty amazing. I've never seen a guy do a radio show like you with no papers. No. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It really is.
Well,
I mean,
I
kudos
had to
to
have
you.
my iPad today to glance at my list because I wasn't going to risk trying to do that for memory because I didn't put anything I was going to say, but I just listed my executive orders because you're the boss and you said I want executive orders from President Keefer, so we cranked him out today.
It was fantastic. It was great. It was a great show. Need to know right here on TKR. Thank you, my friend. Have yourself a great weekend.
All right, Tony, right back at you.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.